Most people look at a chessboard and see a game of logic, a battle of wits. But in the early 2000s, on the outskirts of Moscow, one man saw something much darker. To Alexander Pichushkin, the 64 squares weren't just a game. They were a map of death. For 14 years, Bittsevsky Park was his private kingdom. A vast, dense forest where neighbors walked their dogs, lovers escaped the city, and the elderly enjoyed the fresh air. But many of them never came back. They vanished into the fog, leaving no trace behind. The police were looking for a ghost, a monster hiding in the trees. But the truth was far more terrifying. The monster wasn't hiding. He was working at a local grocery store. He was polite. He was ordinary. He was someone you might pass on the street every single day without a second thought. Today, we dive deep into the chilling mind of the Chessboard Killer. We will look at the trauma that rewired his brain, the ritual of his crimes, and the fatal mistake that finally ended his game. This is the story of Alexander Pichushkin, and why his version of chess was the most dangerous game ever played. To understand how a man becomes a monster, we have to look at the boy he used to be. Alexander Pichushkin wasn't born with a heart of stone. In fact, early photos show a regular child with a shy smile. But in the mid-70s, a single second on a Moscow playground changed the trajectory of his life forever. It was a simple accident. Alexander was playing near the swings when a heavy metal seat struck him directly in the forehead. It was a brutal blow. Today, we know that damage to the frontal lobe can lead to an inability to control impulses and a total loss of empathy. But in the Soviet era, he was simply patched up and sent home. When Alexander returned to school, he was different. The world felt loud, confusing, and hostile. He struggled to speak. He struggled to make friends. He became a ghost in his own life, drifting through the gray corridors of Soviet apartment blocks. The only person who didn't look at him with pity or confusion was his grandfather. He recognized the boy's isolation and gave him a tool to survive it, a chessboard. In the quiet corners of Bittsevsky Park, under the shadow of the massive oak trees, they would sit for hours. His grandfather taught him that on the board, there is no chaos, there are only rules, there is only logic. For Alexander, the park became his sanctuary. The chess pieces became his only true friends. But when his grandfather passed away, the only anchor holding him to humanity snapped. The park was no longer a place of peace. It became a hunting ground, and the game of chess turned into a hunt for souls. The year was 1992. The Soviet Union had collapsed, leaving behind a landscape of uncertainty and shadows. For an 18-year-old Alexander, it was the perfect environment to test his darkest theories. He didn't want to kill a stranger. He wanted to see the light fade from the eyes of someone he knew. He chose a classmate, Mikhail Odichuk. They spent weeks together sitting in the park, talking about the infamous serial killers of the past. Alexander was testing him, proposing a dark pact. "Let's kill someone together," he suggested. It sounded like a twisted teenage fantasy, but while Mikhail thought they were just playing a game of words, Alexander was preparing the board. When Mikhail finally got scared and tried to back out, Alexander realized his friend was no longer a partner. He was a witness. And in the logic of the chessboard, a witness is a piece that must be removed. He led Mikhail deep into the secluded thickets of Bittsevsky Park. There was no hesitation, no pulse of fear, only a cold, clinical curiosity. Alexander strangled his friend and disposed of the body in a sewage pit, watching it disappear into the darkness. When the police questioned him days later, they looked at this thin, awkward teenager and saw nothing but a quiet student. They let him go. That moment was the most dangerous mistake in Russian criminal history. Alexander went home, sat in his room, and looked at his empty chessboard. He marked the first square, 1 down, 63 to go. He realized then that the world was blind, and he was finally free to play. For the next decade, Alexander Pichushkin lived a double life that defies logic. By day, he was the helpful clerk at a local grocery store on Kersoneskaya Street. He moved boxes, joked with his co-workers, and was polite to the elderly ladies who bought their bread from him. To the world, he was a nobody, an invisible man in a gray city. But when the sun went down, the apron came off. He would head to Bittsevsky Park, not as a visitor, but as its absolute ruler. He knew every fallen log, every hidden ditch, and every shadow that the streetlights couldn't reach. He developed a signature move, a ritual he called the invitation. He didn't hunt like a beast, he hunted like a friend. He would find the vulnerable, the lonely, the grieving, or those struggling with a bottle. He would approach them with a smile and a bottle of vodka. "Let's go to the park," he'd say. "Let's drink to the memory of my beloved dog." It was a lie, but it worked every time. He would lead them deep into the woods to a specific bench he called his office. He would wait until they felt safe, until they felt like they had found a companion in a lonely world. And then, in the middle of a sentence, the game would end with a sudden, violent strike from a hammer. Pichushkin wasn't just killing for blood, he was killing for a score. He was obsessed with the number 64, 1 life for every square on his chessboard. In his mind, he was competing with the ghost of Andrei Chikatilo, Russia's most infamous monster. He wanted to be the grandmaster. He began to drop his victims into the complex sewage system of the park, watching them disappear into the underworld. He felt untouchable, invisible. For years, the police treated these disappearances as tragic accidents or missing persons cases. They didn't realize they weren't looking for a series of accidents. They were watching a master class in mass murder. Every grandmaster eventually makes a mistake. For Alexander, that mistake happened in June 2006. He invited a co-worker, Marina Moskalyova, for a walk in the park. He thought he was in total control, but Marina was smart. She knew Alexander was strange. Before she left, she wrote a note for her son, telling him exactly who she was with. When the police found her body, they found the note. Within hours, they were at Alexander's door. He was calm. He even smiled. But when they showed him the security footage from the metro, showing him walking side by side with his victim, the game was over. The king had been cornered. At his trial, there was no remorse, only pride. He told the judge that he felt like a father to the people he killed, opening the door to another world for them. He complained that the police were cheating by not counting all of his victims. He wanted 64. They stopped him at 48. Today, Alexander Pichushkin is a resident of the Black Dolphin. It is the most secure prison in Russia, a place where the sun never shines and the doors never stay open. There are no chessboards there, no parks, only a concrete cell and the memory of the lives he stole. The forest of Bittsevsky is quiet now. The shadows have retreated, but the soil still remembers the game, and the man who tried to play God with a hammer and a board. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. The shadows have a way of hiding the truth, but here, we bring it to light. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next investigation.